18,000 years, it has risen by 400 feet. 400 feet. At one time, you could walk from England to France. You didn't need a tunnel. There was no North Sea. It was all dry land. But as the ice melted slowly, sea level rose and kept rising, and still rising today. So let's take a look at some of the data. I'll try to be fairly brief, and we'll leave some time for questions, because I'm sure you'll want to know more about specific items. Lots of them to choose from. I'll spend most of my time on number 1, and I'll show you something about number 8. Well, just to remind you again, I don't think I need this.
I think Worcester needs it.
What?
Worcester needs it.
The other campus is getting it by,
Yeah, you need to keep it.
Should I leave it?
yeah. You
No,
might want to put the
yeah, you need to
transfer
keep
in
it.
your pocket, though.
Is that better? Okay. All right, the IPCC thinks that global warming is human caused, and they even claim that they're 90 to 99% sure. I don't think they have any evidence. The NIPCC, which is our organization, and you can look it up, says that carbon dioxide is not a pollutant, that mitigation is pointless, costly, and completely ineffective. In other words, lots of pain, no gain. We try to convince politicians of this. Believe me, it's very difficult. It's not a partisan matter. Well, this is one issue on which Obama and McCain agreed during the last campaign. Unbelievable. They both believe that carbon dioxide is a pollutant, needs to be controlled. They may differ on the exact method, but that's a detail. Just to tell you what the NIPCC is, it's a non-governmental international panel on climate change, which examines on an independent basis. We're not paid by anyone. We're entirely volunteers. We've now published a summary a few months ago, and our report, our full report, is coming out next month. It went to the printers yesterday. It's going to be this thick. 750 pages. I have a collaborator, Craig Itzo, who is much younger than I am and very energetic. Let me tell you, it pays to have a young collaborator on these jobs, particularly those who are willing to work. And Craig is a real worker. Well, you've seen this. I just want to show you some data. These are temperatures in the last 10 years. The remarkable thing about these temperatures is that they are not rising. In fact, they're falling. The warmest year in the last 10 years was 1998. On the other hand, carbon dioxide is increasing. So those who say that carbon dioxide must be the cause of warming, had better look at this graph. It's based entirely on observations. You see two temperatures here. One is the surface temperature, and the other one is the satellite temperature. They generally agree. So no matter how you measure temperature, it hasn't warmed in the last 10 years. And it's likely to continue to cool for the next 10 or 20 years. Here's another interesting result. This is from satellites. It shows that contrary to climate models, which all say that the polar regions must warm the fastest, the Antarctic region down here hasn't warmed at all. In fact, it has cooled. I wonder if the lights can be turned down a little
Yeah,
bit.
could you dim at least the front row,
Can you dim it?
or turn it off?
Sorry.
There you
Is
go.
that better?
This is the record of the last 100 years. Starting around 1900, starting 1880, excuse me. 80, strong warming between 1920 and 1940. Obviously natural, because there was really not much human activity before World War II. Then a cooling for about 35 years, and a warming more recently. I like this graph. I'll tell you the story. When Al Gore was vice president, you remember that, he wanted to show how severe a future warming would be for the United States. So he divided the United States into 18 regions, from California all the way to New England. These are 18 regions. And tried to see what kind of disasters would occur in each region. Each region had a disaster. Something would happen in the next 100 years which would be a disaster. Al Gore made a serious strategic error. What was his error? Well, to make predictions for the future, you need a model. The error he made is he used two models. And as you can see, they completely disagree with each other. If he'd only used one model, you wouldn't have seen a disagreement, obviously. But if he used two models, one is red, one is black. One is an English model, one is a Canadian model. The details are not important. The important thing is that they give opposite results. The predictions are diametrically opposed. For example, one model says that North Dakota is going to be a swamp, and the other model says, no, it's going to be a desert. There you have it. You see that in about half the cases, the two models disagree with each other. Not only in the amount, but also in the sign. That's for precipitation. Even when they agree on the sign, there is big disagreement in the amount. For example, here. Well, this should convince you that you cannot trust in the models. And now, the question is, how can you decide whether an observed warming is due to human activities, due to greenhouse gases, or is natural? This report, which you see here, is an official U.S. government report, prepared by, I would say, the best experts we have in the field. Published in 2006. Temperature trends in the lower atmosphere. What does this report show? It shows what we call fingerprints. Each cause of warming produces a certain pattern of warming. Greenhouse gases produce this pattern. You see a characteristic hot spot over the equator. This is the equator. This is the North Pole. This is the South Pole. This is altitude. This is at about 10 kilometers or 6 miles. You see a maximum rate of warming in the tropical zone at about 6 miles altitude. So this is the characteristic pattern from greenhouse gases. This is the pattern from aerosols. This will be the pattern from ozone. This is the pattern from volcanic eruptions. This is the pattern from solar irradiance. If you add all the four things together, you get this pattern. That's what the models tell you. Every model tells us that the greenhouse gases should produce this kind of a pattern. A hot spot in the tropical zone at an altitude of roughly 10 kilometers. That comes right out of the report, and also the IPCC gets the same result. So let me show you this. This is taken from the report. I have changed nothing. Using all the forcings, all the climate forcings, you get this hot spot here. Here's the equator again, here's North Pole, here's South Pole. Okay. This is the fingerprint of greenhouse warming, according to the models. Fingerprint of greenhouse warming. Okay, what do we actually observe? What temperature trends do we see? It's in the same report. These are the observations from radiosondes carried in balloons. No hot spot. In fact, you get a cool spot. You get the opposite result. This is very significant. This is the strongest evidence we had against any appreciable greenhouse effect on climate. The fact that the fingerprints don't match. What do our opponents say? Well, they say maybe there's something wrong with the observations. How I can argue that? Yeah, it's always possible, but I don't think so. The people who made the observations don't think so. So let's not worry about it. We have actually worked on this problem and extended it somewhat. And just to show you temperature trend versus altitude, kilometers, and you see the models show an increase in the trend, and the observations show a decrease. So a complete disagreement. Unfortunately, from this we cannot tell just exactly how important the greenhouse effect is. All we can say is we don't see it. It must be there. In other words, I am a strong believer in the existence of a greenhouse effect. I think there must be some effect because of the increase in carbon dioxide. It's a greenhouse gas. It must produce some kind of an effect on climate. But it is small. We don't see it. Anyway, this is a matter of great dispute. I won't give you the details, they're too gory. Excuse the pun. Feedback. I've already mentioned the fact that cloud feedback would give you a negative feedback. There are other kinds of feedbacks, but now I want to discuss this issue of what actually causes climate change. These data come, as you can see, from a stalagmite. You know what a stalagmite is? It's one of these things that grows in caves year by year. The nice thing is, there are layers, like tree rings. You can actually count them. So you know exactly the date. Exact date. Here's the date. This covers a period of 3,000 years. And you see a correlation between the carbon-14 isotope and the oxygen-18 isotope. Now, what are these isotopes? Carbon-14 is a proxy for solar activity. Oxygen-18 is a proxy for temperature. You don't have to take my word for it. There's no dispute on that. If you look at the central section, which is blown up here, you see that the correlation is amazingly close, almost year by year. I find it very, very convincing evidence that solar activity changes, which